Welcome back, everyone, to Switch Point, and this week it is episode 19 of our Nintendo podcast here at Final Weapon. It's been a pretty eventful week, in all honesty, and I don't think we were really expecting that, but there was quite a lot that happened this week, and I think the best place to start has to be with what is easily going to be one of the biggest third-party games on Switch 2 this year, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, released on Switch, and it's an amazing port. Cyrus, what do you feel about that game finally making the jump to Nintendo platforms, I guess?
Feels like it's been a long time coming. I've been really hoping to have all the Final Fantasy VII games on a handheld console. I think obviously it's on the Steam Deck, but that doesn't really count. That's kind of cheating. It's funny how it feels like just a few years ago we were in a time where there were no Final Fantasy VII anything on Nintendo consoles whatsoever, and now we start with the original, now Intergrade, and from there we will get the full trilogy on the console. So I'm actually gonna let you kind of tell me your impressions because I haven't actually bought it yet, but I've been meaning to, so I really want to hear what you think.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. So, happy to dive in. I reviewed it here for us at Final Weapon. Be sure to go check out our 30-minute review. We've also got a 20-minute tech performance overview with frame rate analysis and stuff like that. But generally, this is a fantastic port. I've definitely seen some people online try to say it's perfect. It's the perfect port. There's nothing wrong with it. That's definitely not true. I always am critical when I review things. There's definitely some artifacting going on with DLSS, some slight textures that look a little off, but in all honesty, like as a major Final Fantasy VII fan, it's my favorite game of all time. I give two craps about that. It is exactly the experience I wanted on the Switch 2. It looks beautiful. The cutscenes are incredible. And, before even diving into everything else, the one thing I really want to focus on that I touched on in my review, but I feel like people overlook is the audio quality. And I feel like I played many Switch games where there was compressed audio or the audio just didn't sound very good. But let me tell you, this game sounds incredible on the Switch 2, especially portable mode. I was really surprised. Playing and the scene that it really hit me was just going into Sector 7 for the first time in the slums, but also it was the scene where I was running in and fighting off the enemies while riding the bike with Jesse. And that's a really just guitar heavy rock track, and I mean it was just bumping on the Switch. I was like, dang, like this sounds good. And you'll really notice the crispness of the characters' voices. It sounds exactly like it does on PlayStation, right? I played this game on my TV with a surround sound system multiple times. It's probably my sixth or seventh time replaying it. I mean, it is a great experience, and it's exactly what you want on the Switch 2. Visually, it's beautiful. It's easily one of the best looking games on the system. I mean, between this and Cyberpunk, I don't know, you can pick which port's better, but it's one of the best ports on the system. Highly recommend. It's been so great to see so many players that never got the chance to play it jump in and be like, "Oh my gosh, no one ever told me about this game." And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. So I'm loved it. I played probably about 25, 30 hours. The new streamlined progression mode is kind of like a cheat menu. It's a lot of fun to mess around with, but it's a great port. I love that it's $40. That's super fair because there's over 100 hours of content in this game. And I highly recommend, if you're even at all interested in Final Fantasy VII or you've replayed it, it's an easy pickup. It's just so fun on the system. I mean, I know like Cyrus, you've definitely played Remake a couple times, but like it's so fun. It's so good on the system.
Perfect. Exactly what I needed to hear. I was actually gonna ask because if memory serves, you did play the Cyberpunk 2077 port. I wasn't actually sure because I've heard people say that they think that's the best port on the Switch 2. Now people say this, and it makes me wonder. I don't really know if there is a perfect port on the Switch 2. Obviously, there's
No.
no such thing as a perfect port, but I'm curious to see kind of in the broad scale which does the best job of adapting a really tricky to adapt game to games that are massive open areas and open worlds and putting it onto a smaller system. I think by default, Cyberpunk probably wins just because it's not a game key card, but it gives me hope for when Rebirth eventually comes out. Because honestly, on the subject of sound design, I think I actually like Rebirth's soundtrack a little bit more than Remake's.
Definitely.
So I'm very curious to hear how that sounds on the Switch too. And though I will say on that note of if you are ever interested in playing Final Fantasy VII, I'll say this, and this is a broader topic for the dedicated Final Fantasy VII series we have called Under the Plate, which you should absolutely check out. But I don't know if it's a good idea to start with the remake. I think you should, if you've never really gotten into Final Fantasy VII, play the original first, then get to the remake. I'm curious to see if you agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can do either. I think for Nintendo players that are jumping in for the first time, I would expect that you're probably going to get Rebirth and Part 3 in the next 2 years on the system. So if you're willing to wait, then you can play that. I definitely, if in the perfect world, I would tell everyone to play every Final Fantasy VII compilation title and the original game, but that's just not possible. I mean, you get way more out of it playing the original for sure, but I do think that you can easily start with Remake and play Rebirth and have no problem at all with the story. It'll be really good. And I will say, if you buy the system, if you buy the game digitally right now in the eShop, I think it's through February 1st, but you get the original game for free, which is a really good deal. And I expect that when Rebirth comes out, they're probably going to do something like they did for PC and PS5, which was the twin pack. So you'll get Remake and Rebirth for free together. So for one price. So it's a really good deal. I just highly recommend it. In terms of like what I think is more impressive, um, gosh, I do think that the visuals are much better in Rebirth, but that's more of an art style thing. It looks crisper in a lot of areas, and I also am definitely a little biased towards just the cinematography and the cutscenes and the animations. But I definitely agree. Like Cyberpunk's open world is probably the most impressive thing on the system so far. I do think it's just very promising, though. We can take such a huge, high-budget AAA RPG like this and bring it to a portable system with, minimal drawbacks at all. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Rebirth looks like. I think with Square already having one title of this caliber under its belt, I think that Rebirth will potentially look even better. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm really excited for that, and I'd expect that comes later this year if I had to bet.
Agreed. I would agree with that. I think it'll be definitely exciting. I imagine this year will be a huge blowout of Final Fantasy VII news, but that's a subject for another time. For now, I think, this week has been a blowout of a lot of very different Nintendo news, if you'd like to take it away.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the big one was this weekend, right? We had the Super Mario Galaxy movie direct, and I mean, new trailer, Yoshi's been revealed. I love this trailer. I thought it was awesome. The little nods here and there. It really, I will say, I think the thing that surprised me the most, it really does seem like they are very much so leaning into Odyssey, right? Like Fossil Falls also being here. I'm honestly a little surprised. Like, don't get me wrong. I love Odyssey. It's my favorite 3D Mario game, but I was a bit surprised, but I'm happy to see it there. And it makes me wonder what else we might see in the movie.
Agreed. I think, yeah, I absolutely love the trailer. It's funny when it started, and they were looking in the what was the name of that world from Odyssey that they show off at the beginning? Sand Kingdom.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just called Sand Kingdom. Um, when they were showing it off, there was a moment where I'm like, what's in here? I got so caught up in the Galaxy stuff, I genuinely forgot that the last movie teased Yoshi. So it was a huge surprise and a well earned one, I think, to see him finally properly. And yeah, I definitely agree that it's interesting how it's taking inspiration from a lot of different eras of Mario. Because obviously there's the Odyssey influence, there's the Galaxy influence, but there's also, Super Mario World, there's Yoshi's Island, because there's a tease of Baby Mario and Baby Luigi. Which is interesting, actually. Now that I think about it, wasn't Baby Luigi? No, Baby Luigi did show up in Yoshi's Island, but he was properly in Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. So it's interesting to see how many elements of Mario's past, more so than the first, it feels like. Because the first felt more just a love letter to classic Mario.
Mm-hmm.
This feels more encompassing. And I'm curious to see what other references we get, because I was obviously we see Birdo in there, but I was surprised there's a blink and you miss it moment where Birdo is attacking Peach and there's Mauser for a frame. And it was so surprising to see Mauser. I haven't seen him since I mean, if we're being technical, obviously Super Mario Bros. 2, but there is also I grew up with the Super Mario Bros. Cartoon show. And so seeing him again, it felt like a little bit of deja vu.
Yeah, no, it did. And I'll say, it with the Sand Kingdom being there, like specifically with the town of Tostarena, right? That's the little enemies that they have there, the Tostarenans, like the kind of the Day of the Dead inspired little NPC characters. So cool to see them there. And I will say the funniest thing for me is it's that whenever they're walking up towards the cave or the area inside the pyramid with the pipe, there's a shot of the Toasteranians behind them, and there's actually a Moai, like the sunglasses enemy from
Oh
Odyssey.
my god, yeah, I remember those guys. I
And it's
loved
just
them.
yes, it's just the little stuff like that, and it's like, man, I was telling a friend of mine, I'm like, I am so excited to see this movie, man. It's like Nintendo has done such great things. I know there's actually quite a few people, and I realized this over the past year. There's a lot of people that don't like the original Mario movie, and I was a little surprised by that. And I guess the original, like the one that came out a few years ago, like I thought it was really good, and it was very, in classic, like you said, very classic Mario inspired. I really enjoyed it. But this movie definitely seems like it's like, okay, we're ramping up and we're really taking inspiration from a lot of these newer entries to Mario. And I'm really excited for it, man. It looks so good. And just like, it is obviously family oriented, like a lot of Nintendo stuff. And especially with Illumination and working on the script there, there's a lot of cheesiness, like Michael, the Toad, right? The
Yep.
Toad. I mean, it's
Keegan
like
Michael
the
Key,
comment
yep.
about Yoshi and stuff. It's funny. Keegan Michael Key. But it's one of those things. I am really excited for it, even as someone who's probably not the main target audience, just because it looks like it's a love letter to all things Mario once again. And yeah, I mean, I'm really interested. This trailer, I feel like, was very disconnected from the first one, really focusing on Yoshi. And I honestly don't really feel like we have a good idea of what's actually happening in this movie so far, which I'm pretty excited about. I hope it stays that way.
Agreed. I think also the animation looks a lot better.
It really
Just in
does.
general, I think I kind of on your point how they've really upgraded the style of the first one. I mean, obviously there's gonna be that illumination cheese. Expect there to be some kind of licensed music used. I'm betting money we're gonna get, Space Oddity or Starman from David Bowie. But I think there's a charm in that too. I have had plenty of friends and younger cousins of mine that love other Illumination films like Sing. I mean, I was a huge fan of Despicable Me when I was younger. So I think it comes down to target audience. I think it really is just it's not entirely for us, but even when you go to the theaters, you're like, oh yeah, I know that reference. I've seen that thing before. And I think that's the fun of it. And I'm excited to see this film in IMAX because I forgot that it's an IMAX film.
Yep. Oh, they
Um,
secured those screens. You know they did. It's
yeah,
the
of
only way to watch a
course.
movie.
Yes, the best way to watch a movie.
I definitely say that biasly because I am like 10 minutes away from a 70 millimeter theater. But yeah, it's the best way to
Oh,
watch a movie.
yeah, for sure. And another thing on Yoshi, so glad they did not pick a popular voice actor or actor to play him. I'm curious to see who voices him specifically because it doesn't sound exactly like the old samples used in Yoshi's story onwards. They sound freshly recorded, but I think they are still done by Tataka, who did the original. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm so glad. I'm fully expecting there to be at some point in some emotional moment for him to just start speaking in English or something. But
No, no. Gonna say I was so happy in that trailer that he doesn't speak and he's like actually Yoshi. It makes no sense for you. It would make no sense for Yoshi to talk, but I'm like, oh my
agreed.
gosh.
Yeah, he's only talked really, if we're talking like talking, he's only really talked in the Super Mario World show. He has dialogue in oh god, Super Mario 64, I guess technically, but yeah, he should not. He should only say Yoshi and other noises. And the fact they're really leaning into that in the promotion gives me a lot of hope. There are so many things I really want to see in this film. So many little references that I'm gonna be keeping an eye out for. Obviously, Odyssey stuff is a no brainer. I think the biggest. I'm curious to hear your answer to this, but I think the biggest little touch that I would really want to see, because obviously Bowser Jr. his whole appearance is based on Wonder. I really want them to at least reference the Super Mario Sunshine final boss. I don't know if Bowser's going to
Mm-hmm.
be the main villain because it's interesting because it seems like Bowser Jr. is going to be the main villain, but I really hope they reference that at least. How about you? What's like a small touch or reference that you really want to see in the Mario Galaxy movie?
I don't know. The Sunshine ending is a great call out. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Maybe it's not what I want to see, but I am kind of mentally preparing myself that we might be seeing talking flowers.
Oh God, yeah, probably. We
Just
might
because
get
like
more
Nintendo's
Wonder.
doing the merchandise, we're getting all the. It's like I don't know, man. I'm having a feeling that we might be seeing some talking flowers in this movie.
Yeah, I do. My biggest hope for the film, I really hope they lean more into the classic music.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know the original Mario movie had a fair amount of music that was used from the originals. Some of it was cut. I believe the scene where they're driving around Donkey Kong's home was originally going to have like a proper Donkey Kong theme, but they obviously had the DK rap and things like that. So I really want to see more actual proper remix themes from Brian Tyler. I need an orchestral rendition of Buoy Base Galaxy, please, more than anything. That's the number one song I want to hear in that film.
That's a great call out. Yeah, I'm just hoping. Like I agree with you. I want more classical arrangements just brought to life in the big screen. But honestly, my biggest thing is I just want to be surprised. I want this to be a really fun film. Again, I love that we don't really know what's going on, and it'll be really exciting to see. I mean, obviously, we've only seen. I think we're going to see a ton of Lumas. We already saw them in the first movie, but I think we'll see a bunch in this one. And I know. Okay, I guess it is in the trailer, like the whole like star shower, like the shooting
The
star show and
festival.
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, like that's great. I'm glad that we're getting that, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I will say for whatever reason, my gut is telling me like for the tease at the end, I don't know. I think it's either gonna be for the solo Donkey Kong film, which is all but confirmed at this point, or maybe if it's keeping with Mario, you tease Luigi's Mansion, or even you bring in Daisy. I don't know. It'd be interesting for
Agreed.
sure.
Yeah, it could also be, Wario and Waluigi. There's a lot of different routes they could go down. And yeah, I mean, I also really liked seeing the 3D world references as well. It looked like the casino area from the final
Yeah.
Bowser's area, which, oh my god, I'm so happy to see that again. That was one of my favorite areas in that game. I hope they bring back the exact music track from that. They did, didn't they? They had a version of that in. No, they had the version of Bowser's boss theme and Bowser's Fury, but in the
Yeah.
first one.
I
But I
love
really
that
hope we
area,
get
man.
same, one of my favorites. So creative too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
But
gonna
yeah,
be
there's a lot
exciting to
of
see.
a lot of different ways they can go. But it gives me a lot of hope, especially because the new Nintendo president is definitely emphasizing bigger projects when it comes to film and extended media, and that's a topic for a completely different day. But with the Mario film and the Zelda film coming out, I'm excited. I really like this initiative from Nintendo. I think it's been very successful so far, and I hope it continues to be successful.
Yep, agreed. And as we build up towards the launch, which is now April 1st, it looks like moved up a couple of days. Very
Yeah,
exciting to see that. And of course, we'll have plenty to talk about there on Switch Point.
for sure. But that was not the only Nintendo Direct news this week, because just today, in fact, Nintendo announced another dedicated Nintendo Direct for January 29th about Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, which personally I'm super excited about. I've been waiting for that game ever since it was announced. Actually, I've been waiting for that game even longer because I adored the original Tomodachi Life. So I'm really excited to see more news about that. We're definitely going to get a release date and more gameplay details. I'm curious to see how it differs from the original in terms of new features and mechanics. I think that will probably be a sleeper hit for the year, as it fills the void that Animal Cross is currently leaving. Even Animal Crossing is currently leaving, even though we just got the Switch 2 update for that.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, I feel like a lot of people, I've seen some surprise about this getting a direct. I'm not surprised at all. This was a huge game on 3DS. It was in the top 15 in sales. I mean, it was a ginormous property. So seeing it come back on Switch, I think Nintendo is thinking what we're thinking, that this is a game that could easily sell 20 million units if it's positioned right. You know? I mean, I know that's a crazy number to say, but Animal Crossing obviously helped, thanks to COVID, sold a lot. But I do think that this game has the potential to do really well and just get a huge audience back on Nintendo platforms that maybe, only play a couple games a year. So this is really important to really flesh out and showcase what this game has. I think the direct's really going to be good. I'll be honest, like I only played a few hours of the original, so I'm pretty interested to see kind of what this one has to offer and if it's something I'm going to be investing some time in. But yeah, we'll see. It's going to be exciting. That direct's set for Thursday, I think.
Yep,
So
Thursday.
yeah, should be a good time and really interested to see what Nintendo has to offer there. Completely agree on the release date. I do think that this is at the very latest May launch. I think it feels
Interesting.
right for May, but I do
Yeah.
think that we might see it in April. It just depends.
Yeah, I was thinking like March, April, but since Wonder is in March as well, it could be tricky.
And
But
Pokopia.
and Pokopia, yes, completely forgot about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think Tomodachi Life is going to be very successful. Uh, Obviously for the reasons you mentioned, but also because keep in mind it's an original Switch title as well,
Yep.
so it's even more accessible. Because even though the Switch 2 sold a lot, I know a fair amount of people that still have the original Switch and haven't upgraded yet. So having this as an option for both systems is huge. And also, we forget, but the announcement of Living the Dream, I'm pretty sure still is Nintendo's most liked social media post ever, which is insane. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I
The
think
hype's
this is
there.
going to do, yeah, it's going to do pretty well. And I'm really excited about it. I know I'm going to lose so much time to it, but that's par for the course with these kind of life simulators. So, hey, what can
No,
you do?
that's fair. That's fair. And I mean, I completely agree. For me, I'll say like you're spot on with the comment about this being a game for the original Switch. Switch has a base of 155 million. That let's assume I guess 15 million of those are now Switch 2 owners. I mean, that's still over 130, 140 million people, or I guess Switch owners, right? Some people have two, etc. There's no way to judge it, but point being, you have a massive 150 million plus user base, or Switch base, not user base, on the original console. The fact that this game launches for that is ginormous, and this is part of Nintendo's strategy to continue to give games to those players and help slowly transition them to the Switch 2. Personally, I think I'm most interested in what kind of like Switch 2 update or version Tomodachi Life is going to get for the console. Because I do think that there's going to be some enhancements there. And obviously, I'd assume they're going to launch day one. But maybe we might see some sort of thing where there's a Switch 1 copy and then there's a Switch 2, version or edition that launches with it, maybe. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to kind of see how they market that. Just because, again, that's a big, big game, and I know that they're not just going to want Switch owners to play it.
Agreed, definitely agree. And I also agree with you on the point about the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, because I think the best example for what they might try to do is with Metroid Prime 4, because
Hmm.
that also released with two different editions. I think it'll be a smaller edition, kind of like Metroid Prime 4. I'm not expecting any big differences in, features and things like that, but I am expecting, like, better visuals, obviously. I think mouse controls is a no-brainer, especially with how, the original Tomodachi Life had a lot of emphasis on like the stylus and playing around with the Mii's and things like that. So I think that'll probably be a big factor. I'm excited. I'm definitely gonna get it on the Switch 2 when that comes out, just because I've been obsessed with my Switch 2 ever since it came out. So I'm definitely excited, and I wonder if there'll, this is a vain hope, but I would like to see some sort of multiplayer stuff. Um, just because it's really interesting that a lot of recent Nintendo games have really emphasized game share and multiplayer functionality, which is a huge initiative, and I'm kind of impressed with how they've implemented it across different Switch 2 systems, but also Switch 2 and the original Switch, which is massive. I was not expecting that to be a feature that they emphasized going in after the release of the Switch 2.
Yeah. No, definitely. I'm really interested to see kind of how this shapes up. And again, it's kind of crazy that this is a game that's coming out in just a few months. I mean, there's no way it's. I mean, they said spring, so we know it's coming out in a few months. So
Yes.
I'm very excited to kind of see what's in store there. But I completely agree on all your points. It's going to be really exciting, and we'll definitely have a lot to talk about next episode about what we saw with Tomodachi Life. But again, par for the course, that was not the only thing Nintendo shared this week. Randomly out of nowhere, we got probably the craziest update of the Switch 2 so far, which was a random update for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And I mean, here's the thing of why this is so crazy, right? Out of nowhere, this is a game that came out a year ago in January. It was almost to the day a year ago whenever they dropped this update. And they added Dixie Kong, new free playable character, massive content. They added a free update too for a new mode. And the biggest change, which people are not talking about, which is the reason I gave this game a 3 out of 5, they fixed the problem with two-player co-op. So instead of jumping, used to if you jumped over like the same object, the second player wouldn't and they'd fall. And they fixed that. They fixed the glitch, and it was available on 3DS. It started there, and since this was a port of that version, it had that issue still. And they fixed it, and they just magically updated it like it was nothing, and the game now runs at like 4K 60.
It's unbelievable. I remember seeing the video revealing the update on my YouTube feed and just doing a double take, because I was like, oh, new update for a new game. Oh, it's a Donkey Kong Country Returns HD update. Is that Dixie Kong on the thumbnail? I just different stages of my surprise, because I think a lot of people, I noticed this in the comments, that a lot of people are potentially missing how big this could be. Um, because this isn't just a game that released last year getting an update. This is a port of a 3DS game, which was a port of a Wii game, getting new content, and not just like any new content, a brand new character. When did I think original Country Returns released almost 16 years ago? So the fact that that game is still getting some form of new feature is insane, and could open the doors for other ports, like potentially Luigi's Mansion HD, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, getting new content, because it's so random. It makes no sense that this was something they were like, oh yeah, let's do this. I almost wonder if this was planned as part of launch and they just didn't get around to doing it. And so they just added it after the fact. But yeah, I'm befuddled by this because it just makes no sense of how crazy this could be potentially. And the fact that no one is talking about it, I mean, why would anyone talk about it? It's a update for a year-old game, which was a port of a Wii game. It makes no sense. So I'm reliving how confused I was when the trailer dropped. So, yeah, it's bonkers. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, it's a definitely a baffling update, and I agree. Like, it's kind of surprising that no one is saying anything because this is just such a crazy thing to have happened, right? Like, it's not a simple, hey, we added 4K 60 support. Like, it looks better, and the game looks significantly better, right? Like, it looks significantly better. It's just wild to me because it's like, man, you guys really put this on here, and no, like, this is a significant update. Dixie Kong is playable in this game now. It's crazy. It unlocks a whole new gameplay style. They got the whole, trial, the fast speedrun mode. It's just crazy, man. I, I, I don't know why. I don't know how this ended up coming out. Maybe they were gonna do a patch for the glitch, and they were like, we're just gonna wait for the Switch 2 update, and then Nintendo decided to delay it, as Nintendo does. Because again, we've said this plenty of times before. Nintendo sits on stuff all the time. This update could have been done for 6 months. You know what I mean? So we have no idea why, but it's just crazy that they decided to update this. And I think something that you and I talked about. This kind of opens the door for what Switch 2 updates can look like, because this was a significant content update.
Agreed, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't just open the door for Switch 2 editions, but also just makes you wonder about certain games that have been rumored like as ports for ages that have been done. Obviously the one everyone thinks about is Metroid Prime 2 and 3. And that has been rumored almost since the original Switch came out, and only the first one came out, and it had significant upgrades in terms of visuals, more than anyone I think would have expected. So it makes me wonder if is the reason they're sitting on those games because they want to add more than just improved visuals? Do they want to add potentially significant new content? It completely changes the way we think about how Nintendo approaches ports. I joked about you with this, but I almost wondered, I was kind of surprised they didn't add a change to how Donkey Kong looks to update him with more of his recent model.
Yeah,
I think that would have been a
yeah.
really funny unlock if you do really well on the speedrun stuff. But yeah, I mean it's insane. It I want to see more of these kind of updates. Even if they're updates to games that haven't really gotten a lot of updates since launch. There's as I mentioned, Luigi's Mansion 2, but also Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Maybe that could get a cool visual update.
Oh, it
And
needs it. It needs
it
it.
definitely
It needs
needs
to run at a
it.
higher frame rate.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's crazy. It's such a weird. It was so out of nowhere too. I mean, it just on a random day at a random time. Hey, here's an update to a game that came out a year ago.
Yeah, it made no sense, and I honestly was like baffled whenever you messaged me about, hey, they just dropped an update for Donkey Kong Country Returns. What?
Yeah,
But it was very baffling, and it's gonna be interesting to see how what comes from that in the future. But I will say I think we should kind of move to the other big and definitely the biggest update of the week, which was we finally got a detailed overview trailer of Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Meetup at Bell Bell Park. Wow, that's a mouthful. Launching on March 26th. So we have a date. It's coming in March, and they kind of overviewed everything the update has to offer.
yeah. I mean, a lot of it is stuff we kind of expected. A lot of the minigame compilations and things like that. A lot of people predicted. I don't remember when the trailer first released if they accidentally revealed Rosalina as like a character in the background or something. But yeah, obviously Rosalina as a character fits in very nicely with the upcoming Galaxy film. Glad to see her there. Terrified of the implications of Elephant Rosalina. But I think we've had this conversation a lot about what the recent Nintendo Switch 2 editions have had to offer and whether they are worth sometimes often the $20 upcharge up for an upgrade. And in this particular case, with this particular Switch 2 edition, I'm kind of mixed. On the one hand, I like that it has a lot more just sheer amount of content, with the minigame stuff, the Toad challenges, the Koopaling challenges, a new playable character, better visuals, um, stuff with the mouse, also Luma as a character, which is kind of cool. I'm glad to see that. Oh, an assist mode. I do like that. That'll be very helpful for the younger audiences who are jumping into Mario for the first time. But in terms of just the actual quality of said content, I think it's lacking compared to some of the other ones we've gotten so far. I'm curious to hear what your opinion of this is, because it's very much a mixed bag. This is very a middle of the road Switch 2 edition for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm really underwhelmed. I know that that's maybe controversial, but I get what Nintendo's trying to do here, right? And I agree. There is a lot going on. We have the challenges for Koopaling, the challenges for Captain Toad. We have the challenges, the like mini games in Bell Bell Park. My perspective is this, right? When I look at these Switch 2 editions, I'm like, okay, how much time am I going to be able to spend in this, right? So Kirby came out. Yeah, it was fun. That's probably about 2 hours of your time and you're done. But not enough for me to justify spending $20. This one, it's like, okay, there's a lot going on here. I like Rosalina as a new character. I like what they're doing with, these mini games look kind of fun. You can play them online. Game share's a thing. That's all great. But the biggest problem for me is like, I just don't feel like that I'm going to spend more than a couple hours with this. And it's, it would have gone a lot further if Nintendo had said, you know what, we're going to go and we're going to have two brand new worlds that you're going to take on the Koopalings in, right? I would have been like, oh, I'm so game. Like, that's a ton of content, right? And I get, sure, these Koopaling challenges, it seems like that there's going to be new Wonder Flower, things that happen. The stages are going to be different in a way. And we saw the overview. There's no judging it until we have it in our hands in March. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, I just don't really know. I just don't really feel that $20 is appropriate for what we've seen. I think $10 again for the 80th Switch 2 edition would have probably gone away a little better if it was $10. But I will say I do lean on the $20 versions. This is one of the better ones. It seems like there is a lot going on, like you said, and we've talked about. But I am interested to kind of see what people think about it, and that will kind of inform my decision. Because I loved Wonder. It's a wonderful game, pun intended. But I am very interested to see how much content this really is. Because if it's just a few, 2 hours with the challenges, and then I just have mini games. Like, I'm not gonna play, hey guys, let's get on Mario Wonder and play mini games more than once. Maybe have people over to play a couple, but I'd rather just play Mario Party.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely with you that in terms of the Nintendo Switch 2 editions we've gotten so far, this has the most content, but it's the quality that will be interesting. You mentioned Kirby, and I did enjoy the little I played of Star Cross the World, but at the same time, it's mostly just revisiting levels, right? There are some cool new gimmicks, but nothing that changes the way I play or approach the game. And to be honest, this goes into a broader concern I've had with the Nintendo Switch 2 editions we've gotten so far. I think there are very few that justify, especially the $20 ones. There are very few that justify that because it's just a lot of it is revisiting content that is in the game, right? Adding potentially asset flips or slight changes in the way we see the game, but nothing too crazy. I think that was why Wonder was a little bit more promising, just because we get a new character out of it, we get new mini games and the things like that. But personally, I think out of all the Switch 2 editions that we've gotten so far, I think my favorite is probably still Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, because those are $10, and that might seem like a lot, but the 4K 60 and the increased frame rate and things like that is such a huge upgrade, even if you're just playing on handheld mode like I did. And it's re-experiencing one of the best games, some of the best games ever made in better quality. I mean, yes, the Zelda Note stuff is so useless. I used them once just to see, but I'm so curious why those were even added in the first place, especially as an app exclusive feature. But in the Metroid Prime 4 Beyond Switch 2 edition was pretty fun. I liked messing around with the different control styles, the mouse controls. That was great. But in terms of the more expensive ones that add more content, I'm kind of underwhelmed with what we've gotten so far. I hope we get more interesting ones down the line, but based on what we've gotten, like the Mario Party one especially was really disappointing. So I don't know. It's tricky. It's a tricky thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is challenging, and it's one of those things that I am just very interested to see how they approach in the future. Like you said, we've gotten a lot of interesting ones, and they're building off of what's established, and it's great. Again, you're getting to experience these amazing games again with higher frame rates, higher visuals. That's good enough, but to charge $20 and just kind of not really give us much with it, it's kind of lackluster. But on that topic, I do think that there is potential. Nintendo, obviously, we have Mario Bros. Wonder coming out. I do think that there is serious potential that we're going to see quite a few more Switch 2 editions come out this year. And I think now, it opens the door with what we know about Donkey Kong and that update and what we know about, Mario Wonder. I think we can kind of start to look at, okay, what games might Nintendo bring in this year as a Switch 2 edition? And I will say there's one in my mind that I think makes more sense than anything else, and it's Metroid Dread. And I
Mm,
think that a Switch 2 edition of Metroid Dread just makes so much sense on so many levels. And, this is a game that it is definitely not looking amazing in portable mode on the Switch 2. I think that Nintendo going in and bringing that with the renowned interest in Prime 4, I think that would be a really easy game to bring over as a Switch 2 edition, considering that we may not get a 2D Metroid for a few years. I think that's an easy bet of just bringing it in and filling in a gap. Because as we've seen, right, Nintendo throughout the last 12 months, we've had a lot of months where we've had two game releases, right? Like we've had a game release and then a Switch 2 edition. In my mind, personally, Tomodachi Life, let's say it launches. Here's my thing, peel the band-aid off. I think Yoshi's coming in April. It's right with the Mario Direct, right? And then I think Tomodachi Life's coming in May. And if Tomodachi Life comes in May, I am very confident that there will also be another game in May, and it will be something of a Switch 2 edition that Nintendo can put at the back half of the month with Tomodachi Life at the beginning. Like we see with I always mess it up, Pokopia and Mario Bros. Wonder in March, right? Like one's early March, one's late March. So I think we're going to get another one in May with Tomodachi Life. And if that's the case, like I think something like Metroid Dread would make a lot of sense. That's about 6 months after the release of Prime 4, and that brings that game forward. Throw in some content with it, and you can get people interested in purchasing Metroid again.
yeah, I definitely agree. I think Metroid Dread's a no-brainer almost, just because obviously you can just do the basic $10 version that adds better visuals and improves the experience of the game. I would also be totally fine if they did a $20 version that added more significant content, like maybe an extra story area that could potentially add some extra content, maybe where you use the Metroid suit a little bit more, or some direct Prime 4 nods. Bring back my hero from Prime 4, Mackenzie, the GOAT, the best character ever created in the series. Some Prime 4 nods would be fun. But yeah, I think there's a lot of definitely potential with that. And in terms of what I would want for an upcoming Switch 2 edition, I think I kind of already mentioned it, but Paper Mario Thousand Year Door is a big one for me. I would really like an excuse to replay that game, especially because I don't really know when the next time we're gonna get a proper new Paper Mario game will be. So having a new version of that where I'm not expecting any drastic content additions. Would it be great? Yes, but I don't really know what you would add to a game that is, remastering a GameCube title. But I think it would be fun. I think there's, just having the improved visuals is enough. And, I think we're definitely going to get a lot more Switch 2 editions when it comes to day one releases with first party. Obviously, we mentioned Tomodachi Life, but another big one that will probably end up getting a day one Switch 2 edition whenever that comes out is Rhythm Heaven Groove. So
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of opportunity. I really need them to improve the actual quality of those Switch 2 editions, because so far I think only the visual updates one have impressed me. I think the Animal Crossing New Horizons one was cool. Probably because they also released a free update alongside it that helped.
And it was five
But
bucks.
and it was $5 exactly. And that actually had weirdly more substantial content than the ones that were $20, which is ironic. Um, but yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see. I think there's a lot of potential with, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 editions of games. I think an interesting one would also be, this depends on if they're planning a sequel to it, but it'd be funny for them to do a Switch 2 edition of ARMS. But I think it's more likely that we get an ARMS 2 before we get a Switch 2 edition of ARMS.
Yeah, I mean, an ARMS Switch 2 edition would be really interesting because, like, that game, I really had a lot of fun with ARMS. That was one of the first games to come out for the Switch and, like, in June, right? And I had a blast playing through it. Played it all the way through, like, 2018 when they had all the updates and stuff and all the characters they added. It's a game that definitely would benefit from a Switch 2, but I definitely lean towards, yeah, if they're going to revisit it, I think you come back and you bring, a brand new approach. You keep the fundamentals, but really change things up and have a really fun sequel with it. I will say another game that comes to mind for me for Switch 2 editions that I think make a lot of sense, Switch Sports, right? So that got a lot
Mm,
of updates for it, adding a couple sports. I think golf was added in basketball.
yes.
So we know that those came in. In my mind, this is a game that makes a lot of sense because realistically, is Nintendo going to add and make like a Switch Sports 2? I don't think so, right? So I think if you go in here and you add like three more sports and you add some more ways to play, you add game share, you add a couple other things like that, you could easily package this as like a Switch Sports Switch 2 edition, and I think it would do really well because since the user base is so young in terms of like the console only having been out for a couple months, I guess we're getting close to 9 months at this point. But this is a game that I feel like you launch this in the summer, you could easily get a bunch of people to pick it up and play. Because in all honesty, I feel like this was a game missed by a lot of people. Like I know a good friends of mine that are more on the casual side of playing, pick up a couple games a year. They picked up Switch Sports, but I don't see this game being talked about as much as a lot of the other games. And I could definitely see Nintendo coming in and having this as Switch 2 edition to try to bring more players in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially, they can add one sport that is fully dependent on mouse controls. Like, that feels like a no brainer. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Because, the sports franchise at its core has always been about taking advantage of the system's hardware. And to be honest, besides, oh my god, I forgot the name of it. The tech demo that released at launch. Um, the
Oh,
Switch
for
2 one.
the Switch 2 Welcome Tour?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I forgot about that game. There hasn't really been a properly good demonstration of everything it has to offer, because that felt more like just an informal, a more formal kind of tech showcase rather than a fun time. So I think having some, additional Switch sports that spice up the experience a bit and add some Switch 2 functionality would be great. I think for me, obviously I mentioned it in our last episode, but the Switch 2 edition I want the most is Smash. I don't know how that would work. I'm still in the camp that I really don't want a full reboot of the series. I want additional stuff to Smash Ultimate rather than uh, a refresh of that formula. And I think really if they just added a few new characters, visual upgrades, and improved online experience, I think it would sell like hotcakes. They can justify that at $20, and people would still eat it up instantly. Yeah, like they could package it almost like as another fighter pack almost. So that's my hope. I don't know how likely it is, but I think, that's for me, and I think a lot of others, the most wanted Switch 2 edition for sure.
I mean, yeah. Like, let's be honest, yeah. And I do think that there is some sense that this makes sense, right? You get a Switch 2 edition, you package in Fighter Pass 1, Fighter Pass 2, and then you throw in the let's get a couple more characters in. It would make sense, right? Is it going to happen? I don't know. In all honesty, if Nintendo wanted to do this as a Switch 2 edition and simply add a couple stages and just put all the Fighters Pass characters together and have it be $60, I'd be thrilled. That's never going to happen. But
Yeah,
I just want, if they were to do anything to Smash, update the visuals to 4K 60, put all the characters together, I'd be happy with it. But I definitely do think that we're closer than we think, but we are further away than we think for Smash 6. I don't expect it to
yeah,
be something that's going to come out in the near future, but I do think that it's not as far away as we might think. But yeah, that's a game that makes a lot of sense. Another one that would be interesting, I think, is Mario Maker 2.
oh yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good one. I mean, it also opens up a door of like similar with Arms. Do we think it's more likely that they update Mario Maker 2 and add in, a wonder theme and things like that, or would they just make a Mario Maker 3?
Mm-hmm. And that's my thing. It's like I think a Mario Maker 3 would be awesome, but my thing is like I don't know if that's something Nintendo's gonna do. I mean, they should, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't a priority and instead they're going to say, you know what, we're just gonna release a Switch 2 edition. We've got mouse controls, we've got another style, we've got some more, building blocks to put in, and we're adding game share and all this stuff. Maybe multiplayer even. Like something like that, I wouldn't be surprised. But again, I kind of lean with what you're saying. I think that a sequel makes a little more sense, but it is a title I could see them considering at the very least.
Definitely. I think another interesting one that I'm surprised hasn't, and this opens up a broader category when it comes to Switch 2 editions, because realistically, we have three categories of Switch 2 updates. We have the free updates, that add basic additional visuals that are improved, like we've got with Splatoon 3 and Donkey Kong recently. We have the $10 updates, which are more smaller, $5 to $10. We can fit in Animal Crossing into that as well. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Metroid Prime. And then we have the more substantial added content ones, which are in the $20 range. And, I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting doors when it comes to those three types of Switch 2 editions. That'd be interesting. I think, it makes me wonder about Pikmin 4. Did Pikmin 4? I don't think that got an update, did it?
No, it's definitely in need of one, and I think mouse controls would make a lot of sense there.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that would be a easy $10 one. And again, ideally it would be nice if all of these were free, but based on Nintendo's previous track record, it's not going to make sense. If they're adding additional ways of playing it, it's going to be $10. If they're adding fresh new content, it's going to be $20. If it's just visual stuff, it'll probably be free. Sometimes they contradict themselves with that, like with Donkey Kong, but that was more just a free update rather than a Switch 2 edition per se. So, I don't know. I think there's a lot of doors they can open up with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting, with the recent launch of Age of Imprisonment, it would be interesting to see them go back to Age of Calamity and update
Yes.
that, bring that forward with, better frame rate, better visuals. I mean, it does run at a lock 30 now, thanks to the Switch 2 backwards compatibility, but I could see them going in and adding more to that. Pikmin was a great call out, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, beyond those, I do think that there's just so much potential for a lot of those overlooked games. I mean, even so, if Nintendo wanted to say, hey, Luigi's Mansion 4 is a couple years away. We're gonna have a Switch 2 edition of 3. Like that wouldn't shock me if we got that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I mean, keeping on the Zelda point, there's Link's Awakening, or even something as recent as Echoes of Wisdom. Those could easily get some additional visuals and things like that to make them look better on the system, and maybe more besides.
Yeah, no, agreed. And with the free update stuff, we've talked about it before. In my mind, personally, there's no group of games that needs an update more than the Xenoblade trilogy and X as well, I guess. So for those four games, I just think it makes so much sense. They're locked at 30. They don't run at 1080p fully. It makes so much sense to go in there and just give a free patch to update it. Maybe we get content. I don't think a Switch 2 edition would make much sense for any of those, unless you were to say, okay, we're going to do Switch 2 editions of 2 and 3, pack in the DLC and add a little bit of stuff. But even then, I just think it doesn't make much sense for a game. 2 having a definitive edition makes sense somewhat. 3 doesn't. I think that you just give them free patches and go on with your day. But I'm really hoping that that comes this year. And beyond that, again, we have plenty of stuff that's coming out. And obviously the new games as well that we haven't talked about, that, we don't know about, obviously. But I'm really excited to see what Nintendo's got in store. And do you have any other predictions for Switch 2 editions we might see, Saris?
I think Xenoblade is an interesting case because, as you mentioned with the DLC, there's kind of as much as I would like them to pack in the DLC, we'd have to remember that with the Breath of the Wild one, they didn't. So it's hard to say if they would like release a Switch 2 edition and also pack in the DLC. You would like to think that they would, but it's a hard balance. Sometimes Nintendo does the exact right thing, and sometimes they're like, "Why did they do this again?" So it's tricky. But in terms of looking to the future, I think there's been a lot of discussion about why were these things announced this week, all this week? Why? Because it seems random, right? This random week just before the end of January to reveal stuff about Tomodachi Life, the Mario Galaxy movie, Mario Wonder. These could have fit into a direct. My personal thinking of it is that they are essentially clearing the table for a massive direct that we're almost definitely going to get in February that focuses on, Fire Emblem and Rhythm Heaven Groove and all the things we don't really know about yet. So I think that'll be really exciting, and you can expect us to be there day one when that drops.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I think that the direct is coming. It's February, it's time. Next week we'll probably end up having to do some predictions because for all we know, it could drop, next Wednesday or Thursday. But it's really exciting. It does feel like they're clearing the way for all kinds of new announcements. I expect major third party stuff. And I will say one last thing on Switch 2 editions, possibly this year. Something that just came to my head that I'm like, man, I really would love to see that. Give us a Switch 2 edition of Astral Chain, because now that Tara's not at Platinum Games, I don't know that we're going to get a sequel to Astral Chain, but gosh, I want one. And if not, like give us a update to it and let's get some more content in there, because that was a really overlooked game that was pretty great on Switch and I really really love that game. So it makes sense, why not? Give us a Switch 2 edition. But yeah, I mean, did you play Astral Chain?
Oh, I did. I loved it. I tried replaying it not that long ago, but it does not run great on Switch 2. That goes for a lot of, third party stuff, which we could get into another time. But yeah, I would love an Astral Chain 2, but if that's not possible, I would be more than happy with just a Switch 2 edition with better visuals and some added content here and there. That's a
Yeah.
win in my book.
Yeah, like what would you think content wise we could get for that? Because in my mind, like I think they could add some kind of like boss rush mode, or they could add even some additional story chapters or something. But that just feels like it was a really good new IP from Nintendo, and I'm kind of sad that like it's just not been touched or talked about since 2019.
Yeah, definitely. I think a boss rush mode would be fun. Some new story stuff would be great. Like, I think that story had a pretty good conclusion, and if I remember right, it had somewhat of a post game. So adding some more stuff to that would just be great, and maybe some extra missions, kind of like a similar vein to the Kirby Star-Crossed World one, but ideally a bit more substantial. But honestly, if they just released a $10 edition with some improved visuals, and some like different ways to play it with the mouse controls. I don't really know how mouse controls would work with Astral Change, but hey, I wouldn't be against it. So I think that would be a lot of fun to see. I'm more than happy to revisit that game down the line because that was definitely one of my underrated favorites from the original Nintendo Switch era.
Yeah, no, same here, same here. And at the end of the day, seems like things are starting to really ramp up here in Q1 for Nintendo. Should be hopefully talking about a direct here in the next few weeks, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, it was a surprisingly busy week here, and seems like we'll have a lot to talk about next week too with this Tomodachi Life Direct. But with that being said, guys, that's gonna do it for this episode of Switch Point. Please be sure to let us know your thoughts down below in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe. It greatly helps us. And at the end of the day, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.